Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
It's the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Prograis.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 386 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Coastman. I'm joined as ever by, from Pittsburgh, PA, Fast Eddie Chambers.
Yeah. What's good, Joe? I'm waiting for you to finish. I'm good though, Joe. How you feel today, man? You all right?
I'm feeling good. Now I'm speaking to you. I feel energized. That was my very poor version of David Diamante there, but
no, I liked it, man. That was good. That was good.
Keep it up. You're too kind. But moving on to the review part of the show, we're going to waste no time. We're going to start here at the Karen Demirchian Sports Complex in Armenia. It was on Friday the 3rd, last Friday. Murat Gassiev returned to the ring. Again, I said it on last week's show, he's been grossly inactive, about 6 rounds of boxing in about 4 years or something since the loss to Usyk. He returned to the ring, like I say, now 30-1. A very suspicious looking knockout in round 2 against the undefeated American Mike Balagun, who is now 20-1. A lot of people were looking at the replay saying that it looked like Gassiev kind of motioned for Balagun to move to his left and Gassiev's right before he hit him with a right hand and put him down. And yeah, it was, I didn't think it was, I'm not trying to say it was suspicious for me, but that's just the word on the curb at the minute. But I didn't see too much wrong with it, but whatever, it is what it is. It was for the vacant WBA Intercontinental Heavyweight title. Moving out now to the Ruhr Congress in Bochum, Westfalen, Germany. Over here, the undefeated Ajit Kabayel, now 23-0, still undefeated. He was able to TKO in round 3 Agron Smakici, who's now 19-2. It was for the vacant EBU European Heavyweight title, which is actually a belt that Kabayel used to hold, but I believe he vacated it just to end up fighting for it again about a year or 2 years later, whatever. It's been a weird kind of journey that Kabayel's had. Like I say, beat Derek Chisora all those years ago, looked real good doing it, and just hasn't capitalized on it at all. And he found himself here fighting for a title he used to own against Agron Smakici. Always got to say his surname a bit differently, but anyways, I didn't see the fight, but from what I heard in round 2, it was like round of the year type stuff. Both guys were throwing everything, and Kabayel was staggered into the ropes. He looked like at one point apparently the referee was going to jump in and stop it, and he came back, I think, and I believe snapped the head back of Smakici in the final seconds, and then came out in round 3 and dropped Smakici once, and then he got back up, and then I believe he forced a referee stoppage after that. So Kabayel, it was quite exciting while it lasted, it would appear, but yeah, I just don't know what he's doing, to be honest with you. I really don't. Apparently he makes quite a lot of money outside of the ring, so he doesn't need to box as such, so maybe that explains a little bit of it. But anyway, that's that. Moving now to the Newcastle Arena in Tyneham Ware, United Kingdom. This one over here was, in the end, televised on Fight TV. I did what I think a lot of other people did, signed up for Fight Plus, which is like a subscription, £8 something per month, but you get a 7-day trial, so I think a lot of people signed up, watched the event, and then cancelled it immediately afterwards. yeah, on the card, let's go through it here. We saw Thomas Patrick Ward lose his 33-1 with a draw. He got in there with Otabek Kolmatov, who's now 11-0 with 10 KOs. Thomas Patrick Ward down in round 1, down in round 4, and down in round 5, and his corner ended up throwing the towel in. Yeah, I said on last week's show, Kolmatov was a little bit of an unknown quantity. He was the favourite with the bookies, obviously being an Uzbek, being a puncher. And I'd said it on so many previous shows that Thomas Patrick Ward, I just don't understand his career. It's been so strange, Let me just talk about the fight briefly. I mean, like I say, Ward down in round 1. I think he did quite well to get through that round. He came out in round 2 and probably won the round, and maybe even won the 3rd round. But yeah, like I say, he's down again in round 4, down again in round 5. And the towel comes in. But yeah, a lot of people were very impressed with the Uzbek, rightly so. I can't wait to see him back in some other big fights down the line. Definitely, he showed some potential and some promise to be a formidable fighter in the near future. But like I say, back to Ward, I just, I feel like this is a bit harsh, but I want to say, like, he's like a huge waste of talent, I'm starting to think. Loads of fights against nobodies, got himself to 30-odd-0. And doing that, padding out your record, I think, Eddie, and I'll come to you about this actually, because this is a guy, just to paint the picture, you're probably not familiar with him, but he got to 33-0 with a draw. He was world ranked for ages, but for whatever reason, didn't have a big promoter behind him, couldn't land a big fight, but he kept having all these fights padding up his record. Now, it's great for fighters that can punch. You can bang these nobodies out within a round or two. Deontay Wilder is the perfect example. You can't get much worse opposition than what they fed Deontay Wilder when he was coming up. He didn't have any miles on the clock after about 35-odd fights. As for this guy here, though, Thomas Patrick Ward, he goes the distance almost every time. He's only got a couple of knockouts, and therefore he's got loads and loads of miles on the clock. And I think that this may be it for him at this level, sadly. I think he had so much to offer when he first turned pro. I don't think he's the same fighter that he was. I've noticed a bit of a slip a few fights ago now, but this guy was a really good amateur. I'm not sure if he wants to continue with his career being, involved in domestic fights. But anyway, back to what I'm saying, Eddie. Can you understand that this guy was a real good amateur, turned pro with a lot of promise, but because he's not a puncher, he ended up putting miles on the clock, going the distance with 30 different guys, whereas Wilder did something very similar, but was able to erase those guys within a round or two. Therefore, he didn't have loads of mileage on the clock when he got in those big, tough fights at the top.
That's a fact. A lot of guys do that early on, even myself. I mean, don't get me wrong. I had a couple tough fights early on too, to kind of, get you to graduate to a certain level and to, just see how it feels. You understand what I'm saying? Being in there with certain guys, with certain styles, heights, strength, power, different things that you might need to improve. But one tomato can after another is really not going to do it for you. What will happen is you'll get to a certain level where your record will be really, really, really big, but you'll be missing some of that seasoning. You know what I'm saying? And especially if you're not a puncher and you're going the distance constantly, it's going to be even harder to improve in situations like that. You know what I mean? So with like you said, with Wilder, he was getting the guys out in 30 seconds, and most people were saying, well, once he gets to a higher level, I might have been one of those guys that said it. Once he gets to a higher level, those knockouts are going to come as easily. We just didn't know Wilder had that crazy knockout power at that level. At that time and at that level, that it would even graduate to the next level with him. You know what I mean? But it did, which is great for him. But a guy like this who doesn't have the power, who is supposed to have a real high level of skill,
but no power, even at the next at the beginning level in the pros, is going to spell difficulty, because once you get to a certain point, your power that you might have, if you already had it, is going to be tough to extend. Like if you look at guys like what's my man's name? Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman was knocking everybody out early on, as he was coming up. But as, the better the competition gets, the harder it is to knock the guys out. So with this guy, and it doesn't seem to be getting that much better, he's going to struggle, or obviously he's already struggling. So, I don't know where his career is going to go from here, but, I'm hoping for the best for him. But he might hit a real rough patch, or already has, over these next couple of fights.
Yeah, like I say, all the best to him. 33-1 now with a draw. He's got 5 KO wins. He's in a tough spot. I think he's actually missed the boat now. There's a few guys that I can remember that kind of come up in my mind, that are in similar positions. Dusty Hernandez Harrison probably being one. A guy that, really padded out his record. He was world ranked, and then, did it all for nothing, really. He's still undefeated. Oh, you're coming back in. Go on.
Yeah, I got one guy, man, I swear. And this was probably, I got two, actually. One was from Pittsburgh, and one was from Philly. One was, his name was Farouk Salim. And you might have heard of him, Joe, I'm not sure. But he had, I don't know, he was like 36-0 at one point. But I think he hadn't fought a guy in the top 50. Or something like that, not even in the top 100, I don't know. And he was just really padded, really horribly padded record. And then one time brought a guy in who was a trial horse, or a guy that you're supposed to knock out. What happened? He ended up getting beat. Then another guy, and this is another way that this can go really, really bad, is a guy that I know from Pittsburgh. His name was Ralph the Tiger Jones, right? Had a horribly padded record. We're talking 0-1, 2-10, 2-5, 1-5. Oh, nobody with a winning record. So, and I think he was around 147 or 140. I think it was 147. So, guess what happened? Got an opportunity to fight up and coming star. That star was Ike Bazooka Cortez. Oh, okay, we'll take that fight. Biggest payday he ever had, but he got destroyed, and his career was over after. So that padded record thing can really work against you in a lot of ways. And in that situation, it changed the course of this guy's life. So you really have to really pay attention early on with, this is if you're a manager, promoter, or whatever, and a fighter, to really think about how far you can go and what that padded record situation can really do for you or do to you. It's something that's really important. You need to be tested. You need to know where your ceiling is as you ascend in your career.
Yeah, I agree. Farouk Salim was a bit of a banger, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Thomas Patrick Walders has done 229 rounds and hasn't boxed anywhere near world level yet, which is just crazy. But anyways, it is what it is. Let's move on. We've given it too much time. Lee McGregor on the card as well now, 12-0 with a draw, returned to the ring after about a year out of it. He got in there with the extremely teak tough Alexis Kabor from Burkina Faso, who's now 29-8. Of course, it went the distance. It went 8 rounds, but Alexis Kabor hasn't been stopped since his debut 19 years ago. He wasn't ready to get stopped again here. Took some good shots. Didn't really look hurt at any point. Did well, actually, as well. Don't know if he won any rounds, but, gave it to McGregor at times, hit him with some decent shots. He's a tough old guy, that Kabor. Elsewhere on that was a really nice free bit of money, I think, as well, on the points for Lee McGregor. What else did we have on the card? Yeah, the main event. Lewis Ritson, now 23-3. He was knocked out in round 9 by O'Hara Davies, now 25-2. It was a left hook to the body. Round 1 I gave to O'Hara Davies. Round 2 I gave to O'Hara Davies. I felt the round was quite close. Ritson did land some lovely body shots, but nothing to discourage Davies, really. For me, I did think he just about nicked the round, Davies. Round 3, a massive O'Hara Davies round. He was piecing Ritson up with big right hands to the head, starting to open up, get through that guard. Round 4, I gave to Davies. Round 5, I think, was a better round for Ritson, maybe a Ritson round. Round 6 was a Davies round, massive round. He hurt Ritson to the body badly. Ritson was in big trouble with the long left hooks to the body from O'Hara Davies, and I felt at that point it's O'Hara Davies' fight to lose. Round 7, Ritson was again in big trouble through body shots. At one point he was trapped on the ropes, guarding his body and just taking shots in the head at free will. Round 8 was a weird one because O'Hara was letting Ritson walk him down a bit and lean on him as well, and O'Hara's output dropped dramatically. It was a really weird round for Davies. I gave it to Ritson on activity, and despite O'Hara landing some real peaches in the last seconds of that round, for me it was a Ritson round, but it was a bit puzzling. I was thinking, wait, is O'Hara maybe running out of gas? Oh no. Then in round 9, O'Hara, like I say, really gave it to Lewis Ritson in that 9th round. Ritson at one point wasn't even throwing, he was just taking shot after shot after shot. O'Hara was taking full advantage, and then he sinks in that beautiful left hook to the body, one of many he'd thrown all night, and down goes Ritson. He gets counted out while he was rolling around the floor in agony. It was an amazing win for O'Hara Davies. Really, really happy for him. He's a guy that was on the show years ago. I always really liked him. I never believed in the bad guy image that he tried to portray. I always kind of knew that he was actually a decent guy from speaking to him. Sometimes in boxing you speak to a guy who's supposed to be this villain, you speak to him one-on-one, and then you go, you kind of take him back a bit. You go, wow, this guy seems really cool, actually. And I always kind of had that vibe from him. So he hasn't had the easiest of careers, the easiest of times, the easiest of journeys, but I'm really pleased for him to win this fight. I felt he'd win. I think it was close with the bookies, but he was the narrow favourite, and really pleased for him. I think hopefully he can get a big fight after this. But yeah, Ritson was still on the floor about 3 or 4 minutes later. He was in big trouble. And like I say, ever since moving up to 140, he just is not the same guy. Quite an easy win, really, looking back now through the entire fight there for O'Hara Davies. So great stuff for him, and like I say, hopefully he can get a big fight next. He certainly deserves it. And then moving to the final card to mention, it took place at the Toyota Arena in Ontario, California, USA. It was live on Showtime, if I'm not mistaken. I streamed it. Wins on the undercard for Terrell Gaucher, friend of the show, now 23-3 with a draw. He was able to knock out in the 9th round Brandon Lynch, who's now 12-2 with a draw. I thought he'd win that quite comfortably, Gaucher, and he did in the end. He was down thrice in round 9. What else did we have? We had Amilcar Vidal Jr., 16-0, stepping in with the 19-year-old undefeated Elijah Garcia, now 14-0. He was able to knock out Vidal in round 4. Vidal stopped standing on the ropes. That one was for the WBC Latino middleweight title. Good win there for 19-year-old Elijah Garcia, perhaps one to keep an eye on for the future. Not to say that Amilcar Vidal is written off by any means. I think he can come again as well. Both guys punchers, both guys exciting. One thing that really wasn't exciting and was a huge disappointment, I don't know if you saw it, Eddie. If you did, come in. If you didn't, just stay muted, I guess. Jarrett Hurd, former unified world champion, bitterly disappointing return to the ring, now 24-3. I couldn't quite believe it. I mean, he boxed here against Jose Resendez, who had a record of 13-1, but I'd looked at it and I thought, nah, he's okay, but he hasn't really beaten anyone really. His one loss came to Marcos Hernandez. I look through the rest of his wins, they weren't against great fighters. Most of them were debutants, and I'm just thinking this is an easy comeback fight here for Jarrett Hurd, who looked absolutely horrendous last time we saw him almost 2 years ago against Luis Arias in his move to middleweight. But I thought he's had 2 years off. It can go one of two ways really, can't it? You can come back energized, refreshed, and, you know, ready to go for that next chapter of your career, or that 2 years can really show and you can look even worse. And unfortunately, it was the latter of the two. He looked awful again. You know, he come into the fight, like I say, I thought he was going to win. I thought he could perhaps even get a stoppage, which was 2-1, by the way. But yeah, he was getting outworked, which is crazy when you consider what Hurd was like a few years ago when he was a world champion. You couldn't outwork him. He'd just smother you, and didn't have the prettiest of styles, but he'd be in your face. He had a fantastic chin, and he would just keep coming forward and just putting the pressure on, man. It wasn't pretty, like I say. It wasn't hitting and not being hit, but he would just maul you, really. And unfortunately, it was him that was on the receiving end, really, of that kind of style, if anything. He tried to, you know, box at range at times, which never suits him at all, doesn't work for him. He was losing rounds doing that. There was points early on where I think he might have nicked a round or two, but any round he nicked, he really just nicked, and every round he lost big, you know, and he was being caught with massive shots from Resendiz, who made Jarrett Hurd honestly look so average, and that potentially could be the end for Jarrett Hurd. I'm not sure I ever want to see him again. I was bitterly disappointed because he messed up my bet big time, and I threw him in there really for not much added value to the parlay, and he completely screwed it up. But yeah, in the end, he actually gets stopped in the 10th and final round because his lip was cut so badly. I think a piece of his lip was actually missing. No problem with that. You know, it is what it is, but before the lip even became a thing, he was losing that fight handily and needed a knockout, and it was just such a terrible show there from Jarrett Hurd. The main event, though, this made up for it, thankfully. Brandon Figueroa now 24-1 with a draw, never in doubt for me, against Philippines Mark Magsayo, both guys friends of the show. He is now 24-2. Magsayo deducted a point for holding in round 8 and another point in round 11 also for holding. Figueroa cut in the 4th round on his eye and then cut on his other eye in round 10. Both of those cuts, though, from accidental head clashes. Yeah, a really, really good fight. I've seen, you know, we said it on last week's show, to be honest with you, Eddie. We said that it could potentially be fight of the year. There are people saying that it could potentially be in the conversation. I'm not entirely sure I'd put it in the conversation because I think we've had some decent contenders for fight of the year already this year, and there's still obviously the majority of the year yet to come. But anyway, getting to the fight, Figueroa came out boxing in southpaw and boxing at range. Again, looked a bit strange, reminded me of when Sean Porter came out and boxed against Danny Garcia early on in their fight, and you could just see that they weren't the right tactics. Magsayo started really well as well. I think he was using his legs, you know, throwing 1 or 2 shots and getting out of there. It was really working. And yeah, Steve Farhood as well had it to Magsayo early on. But yeah, I just think, you know, you don't really need to change anything when it always works for you for Figueroa. And he did eventually revert back to his old style. It was, I think, in the last 30 seconds of round 2 is when we saw the first glimpse of it. And that's how he boxed for the rest of the fight. Although I had Figueroa winning most of those early rounds, I could see, though, that the footwork of Magsayo was definitely troubling Figueroa quite a bit. Magsayo, like I say, really impressed me with his feet. Just that movement and the fact he just land 1 or 2, maybe 3, and get out of there. I felt that, you know, it was frustrating Brandon Figueroa. And early on, I was saying to myself, I think Brandon really should be going to the body a little bit in those instances to try and slow Magsayo's movement down. I was quite surprised to see Steve Farhood have it 4-2 for Magsayo after 6 rounds. That was a bit mad to me, but like I say, he liked his early work. In round 7, Figueroa had a huge round. It was maybe the turning point in the fight, actually, because Magsayo seemed seemed to slow down a little bit. Magseo was doing a lot of holding as well at that point. Like I say, the referee gave him quite a few warnings. I think the referee had quite a decent performance as well. And like I say, deducted a point in round 8. Brandon came on strong, in my opinion, pretty much for the rest of those later rounds when Magseo was only really fighting in bursts. And yeah, I had it to Figueroa in the end quite wide. I think the judges, the 3 judges that scored it, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head how wide they had it. I think there might have even been one that didn't give Magseo a round, or maybe might have given Magseo, I think might have given him two rounds actually, because he had 2 point deductions separately. Maybe I'm ballsing that up a little bit, but anyway, it was very wide on a couple of cards. I'm not sure I had it that wide, but I certainly didn't have it as close as Steve Farhood either, so I was somewhere in the middle there. But yeah, I felt Figueroa was always going to get that decision if it was going to be tight, but I don't think it was particularly tight. I think he did enough to win. And yeah, like I say, if you've not seen Figueroa box before, then you know, it's like that every time. He's always involved in a fantastic fight, never ever lets us down, doesn't matter who his dancing partner is. So yeah, great for him to get another win. But that wraps up the review part of the show. Just before we wrap up part 1, the final thing for me to do is to come in with this week's special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the undefeated lightweight contender, ranked number 11 in the world with a WBA. It is, of course, Ireland's very own Mr. Gary Cully. Gary, welcome to the show, my man.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, man. Appreciate your time.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I appreciate yours also. So, Gary, it's the first time you've been on, so welcome once again. Very delighted to have you. I want to start with a question I was asked a few weeks ago myself, actually. Someone asked me, why is Gary Cully's nickname the Diva? And I didn't actually know the answer. Where does the nickname come from?
Shout out to Lee Eaton for that one. Lee Eaton, the guy who runs I'm sure you know Lee. If you're in boxing circles, you'll know who Lee is. Runs a small hall scene around the UK, but he originally called me a diva at one show. He was running one of the shows back in Belfast a couple of years ago, and he just called me a diva, and it started as a joke, and I said I'm coming to the next show with pink shorts with the diva on them, and I showed up with pink shorts with the diva on them, and it stuck then, and everybody started liking it, and then we actually. I thought that I was the furthest thing from a diva. I suppose in the gym I kind of am. Like I have certain standards that I'd like to be set, but since I've been christened with it, a lot of close friends and family have actually said that it suits me really well. That I kind of act like a diva at times as well. So people seem to be enjoying it. I like the pink. I like the glitter. I like the diamonds. So yeah, man, it's good.
That's cool, man. And you turned pro in September 2017. You're now 16-0 with 10 of them quick. I want to touch on a couple of your previous fights. Obviously, Victor oh my God, I'm saying it wrong. Victor Kotojigov was a good win. I mean, yeah, there we go. You become the only man to stop him. His only other loss came to Maxie Hughes on points. And after that, obviously, you boxed Viral Simeon, who was another guy who'd been around the scene, went the distance with Scott Quigg, went the distance with Lee Selby. You became the second quickest man to stop him, only outdone by Shakur Stevenson. As fans of the sport, as boxing media, we like to get that infamous measuring stick out and compare the way you beat a fighter with the way another proven top guy's beaten the fighter. As a fighter, though, is that something that sticks in your mind also, Gary?
Yeah, for sure. For sure it is. I was when I see it when I get an opponent obviously confirmed and we're in camp, we're preparing for an opponent. You're obviously looking at his previous fights and who he's fought, the results of them and how they've come and stuff like that. And I always try to do the best job possible that I can do, and I always try to outdo what anybody else has done. So going into the Kotojigov fight, obviously knowing that he'd only been beaten by Maxie Hughes on points, I wanted to get him out of there, and obviously I did that. And then the Simeon one, I was up against it, I suppose, from the start because Shakur got him out in the first round, so it was quite difficult to beat that. I got him out in the third. So yeah, Shakur outdone me there by 2 rounds. But yeah, man, it's always something that you're looking at, especially when these guys are at the top level, like Shakur and them kind of names are getting these out. You're trying to measure yourself on what job you can do and how well you can do it, like, you know.
Yeah, and the fight after that, for me, was clearly, for me anyway, the best win of your career. That stoppage win against Miguel Vasquez. I mean, you become the quickest man to stop him. He may not be the fighter he once was, but in very recent times, we'd seen him over in the UK getting blatantly robbed on the cards by Lewis Ritson and O'Hara Davies. So there's, again, the measuring stick. Tell me about that fight, though, Gary. Did you maybe even surprise yourself with that outcome?
Yeah, I suppose Miguel Vasquez, he'd just come off 2 wins as well previous to I fought him. He just fought in a couple of months before we fought for some WBA title. So he won a ranking belt over in Mexico as well. So he was still active, he was still winning. Recently, even after my fight with him, he's went over to Germany and got robbed on the cards again last week. Maybe 2 weeks ago now, but he's still active and he's still winning fights, you know. So he was a dangerous opponent for sure. He, like you said, he'd come over to the UK and beaten O'Hara Davies, I believe, and beaten Lewis Ritson also, I believe. So it was a big test and a big step up at that time for me that I hadn't been in with that level of opponent. But yeah, no, I back myself and I believe that I'm right up there with these guys and I can beat these guys. So it wasn't really a surprise for me. I suppose getting him out of there so quickly, I thought maybe we'd go a couple more rounds into 6, 7, maybe 8 rounds. I always did think I would be able to get him out of there as I went through the gears and start pushing the pace in the later rounds. But I suppose getting him out of there in the 5th round, it was a little bit sooner than I expected.
Yeah, I think that was a fight that a lot of people thought, okay, wow, that's not what's supposed to happen to Miguel Vasquez. I think that got a lot of people's attention. I think it was after that as well that you got the attention of Matchroom. Do you feel like they can take you to the next level?
Yeah, I believe I'm in the best hands possible. I believe I've got the best team around me, the best coaching team, the best managing team, the best promoter in the world. I believe every person, every role on my team is it's the best in the world. They're all professional at their job and they're all at the top of their game. So yeah, man, I believe that Matchroom and Eddie can take me to the next level, can take me to the States and can make me a global star.
And your first fight with Matchroom, I believe, was the Belmedi fight, then the Flores fight most recently. You took out both guys in 1 and 2 rounds. Both respectable fighters. Talk me through that most recent victory, Gary, because I felt that Flores was a bit of an unknown quantity. I didn't really know what to expect from him, but it turned out to be another quick night for yourself.
Yeah, suppose it was quite similar to the Belmedi one. These guys were both undefeated guys coming over to kind of put an end to my party and my hype train, or yeah, like everybody's getting excited about the Gary Cully train now, and these guys were coming over to put an end to it. So 2 undefeated guys, Belmedi French champion 16-0 and Flores 10-0 from New York. So these guys coming over from New York, traveling over 5-6 hours from the States, undefeated records. They're not coming over for nothing. They're coming over to win, and they know their way around the ring, you know. But like I said to you, as well as the Vasquez fight, I believe I'm up there with the world level guys, and I'm levels above these type of French champions, and I think Flores had just won the Feda Latin or Feda Central, another WBA ranking belt, but I believe I'm above that level. I believe I'm right up there with these world level guys. I haven't got the experience just yet, but I'm starting to get there. I'm starting to bridge the gap, and it's not far. I'm not far away from being up there and challenging these guys.
And forgive me if you've been asked this question a million times in the past, but you've spoken in the past about your dream fight being against Shakur Stevenson in Las Vegas. However, you guys did do a bit of sparring in a Russian hotel, so I'm told. What happened there, Gary?
Yeah, we were just kids at the time, I suppose, 14, 15. Shakur actually had a broken hand at the time. He was in a cast, so he was. I was fighting at maybe 60 kg and he was fighting at 56. And we were both just we're in the same corridor. We were staying on the same corridor as the American team, and we would have been kind of friendly with the American team, the Irish team, and the American team. We would have chatted a bit. And, one of the nights we were doing nothing, and myself and Shakur threw the gloves on and did a couple of rounds of sparring. Yeah, so it's good memories to have, and to see where he's at now is deadly. I always knew. I said that we've been at 2 tournaments together as youths and juniors, and as soon as I seen him, I always knew that he was going to be a star, and that's what I said to him back then, was that we'll fight one day and we'll make a lot of money, and we're right on course to doing that. So he's doing his thing, and he's up there with the best in the world now, and it's up to me to prove that, and I'm on course to do that as well. So I believe it's only a matter of time till that dream comes true.
Yeah, Shakur, a fabulous fighter. He's been on the show a few times in the past. I wanted to ask as well, Gary, who have you sparred, preferably not in hotel corridors, but who are some of the most biggest names you've sparred over the years?
I've through the amateur days, I would have been in with a lot of top level guys, Ireland alone, Michael Conlon, the Conlons, David Oliver Joyce, I suppose Katie Taylor when I was just a youth coming through the ranks as well. I've done a bit of sparring with Jack Carroll since turning pro, preparing for some of my fights. Jazza Dick and Sean McComb, all these guys in my gym in Dublin as well. So I've been in there with a lot of top level guys. I suppose more so the bigger names throughout the amateurs, I would say. And then since turning pro, like I said, I've done a couple of rounds we've travelled over, sparred Jack Carroll. I've done a lot with Jazza Dickens as well in the gym. Tyrone McKenna, Sean McComb, all these guys. So top level guys,
Yeah, no, fair enough. And speaking of Katie Taylor, your next fight was supposed to be on her undercard with Serrano. Obviously, it sadly got cancelled. Where does that leave you at the moment, Gary?
Yeah, not quite 100% sure at the minute. Obviously, I believe they're looking for a replacement, and I'm hoping in my head that the show on May 20th still goes ahead. It looks like Katie still wants to come home and to fight in Dublin on May the 20th. I believe Matchroom are probably trying to find a replacement. I see the back and forth between herself and Chantel, so hopefully that one can get over the line, and I'm still on course to fighting back in Dublin on May 20th. If not, I believe they're going to go to Croke Park in September for the homecoming, for the big homecoming in front of 100,000. So that will be on my hit list, but I'll definitely have to get one in before, whether it be in the UK or somewhere else in the world. So if it's not Dublin, I'd like to be out in May, start of June, and then back in Ireland for sure, some stage at 2023.
Yeah, because I didn't hear any announcement, obviously, for your opponent on that card. I know you touched on it, saying that you need a big fight for that card. It doesn't sound like you were too close to securing one at the moment, but is there anyone on your hit list at the moment, Gary, to fill that position?
Everybody and anybody who's going to put me in position to fight for a world title. That's my aim this year. We were negotiating, and I was offered the Maxi Hughes fight when he was with Matchroom. I accepted. I hear that he's gone and got a big fight, so fair play to him if he has. But that was one that was on the radar. I heard Jorge Linares' name being thrown around as well, which would be amazing if that got over the line. So it's going to be a big fight, and it's going to be a big name. Anyone who moves me closer to becoming a world champion is who I want, and I believe, like I said, I'm in the right hand to do that with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. So.
And coming down to my final two questions, you're world ranked, obviously, like I say, with the WBA, the super champions currently, Devin Haney. Thoughts on him? Have you envisioned that fight against him as well? And if so, what happens there?
Yeah, Haney's a very skillful fighter. Very, very skillful fighter. A fight that you have to be switched on 100% and concentrated at all times. It's a game of chess and a thinking game with Haney, and I believe that's what boxing at the top level is. He's a very, very skilled fighter. He's very, very quick, great jab. But a fighter I believe I can beat, and a fighter that I'll be aiming to beat. I know he's going to move up weight to 140. I've got a little bit of time left at 135, but if our paths ever do cross, it's a fight that I'm very confident in winning.
And the regular champion, Gervonta Davis, he's announced he's fighting Ryan Garcia April 22nd. How do you see that one going?
I think Tank later rounds. Listen, if Garcia lands early and lands that left hook, it could be lights out for Tank, but the same goes for Tank landing on Garcia. So that's why it's such an interesting fight, I think, and that's why so many people are interested in it, because they're both very explosive and they've both got power in both hands. I just think that Ryan Garcia is a little bit more defensively vulnerable than Tank is. I think Tank's a little bit more compact, a little bit more sound. Haven't seen him hurt in his career so far, whereas Garcia has been down before. So I think Tank takes it in the later round stoppage.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick, my man. And just finally, before we let you go, Gary, if you've got any closing words, any closing message just to the listeners, you can say whatever you like before we let you go to wrap things up.
Just to keep an eye out, get following. If you're not already following, get following, and jump on board this journey, because it's been a long time coming. Like you said, I've turned pro in 2017. It's now 2023, and this is the year where I become a star. I believe 23 and 24 is the year I become a superstar and go over to the States and become a global name. We've seen Conor McGregor do it for the Irish MMA scene, and we've seen Katie obviously do it for the Irish female boxing scene and the Irish boxing scene in general. But I want to be the next one to spearhead the Irish combat sport. So if you're not already following, get on board, because it's going to be an exciting couple of years.
And I believe it will be. Again, you can follow Gary on Instagram at Gary Cully, on Twitter at Boxer Cully. But listen, Gary, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, my man. Thank you for your time. We'll look out for an announcement soon with you, and we'll hopefully speak sometime afterwards.
Yeah, it won't be too long. Hopefully next 2-3 weeks I've got an announcement out there. And man, I appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. We're going to start here with this one. It's a sad one, but obviously it's this weekend. It was a little bit late that it was cancelled, but obviously Callum Smith's fight with Pavel Stepien has been postponed, and injuries forced Callum Smith out of that fight there. He was going to be the headliner, and obviously he won't be fighting now, which I'm sure everyone kind of knows at this point. And it's now going to be the Robbie Davies and Dara Foley fight, I believe, main event. That's going to be co-main. The main is going to be Diego Pacheco and Jack Cullen. We'll get to that. But yeah, friend of the show, Callum Smith, out injured there, which is a big blow to the card, really. In other news, it's a super fight, really. It's a genuine super fight. May the 7th, Stephen Fulton gets in with Naoya Inoue. It's official. It's going to be fantastic. Obviously, Inoue moving up in weight here to junior featherweight. It confuses me. That's obviously super bantam, isn't it? So moving up to super bantam there to take on Stephen Fulton for the WBC and WBO junior featherweight world titles. It's going to be a brilliant fight. I see a lot of people actually picking Fulton here, which is really interesting for me, because I wonder where a lot of people have him in their pound-for-pound lists, because obviously Inoue is definitely top 3 or 4 on most people's lists, and I hear a lot of respected people saying they think Fulton's going to win and stuff, so I'm intrigued to know where they've got Fulton on their list currently. But anyways, that's a great fight that's been made. All the best there to Stephen Fulton, friend of the show. That's about it, really, for the... No, there's one other piece of news, actually. Super welterweight sensation Sebastian Fundora will be having his next fight against Brian Mendoza, who's also a contender there. It's going to be live on Showtime Saturday, April 8th at the Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California. Brandon Lee as well in the co-main with Pedro Campo, which is a bit of a step up there, so that should be good as well. Tickets on sale now for that one. That is about it though for the news. Moving on now to the preview part of the show. We're going to start here in France at the Zénith de Paris. I'm not even going to do the accent. I cannot do French at all. But let's start with the undercard. Over here, the UK's very own Lauren Price. She is having her third pro outing here. 2-0 currently. She gets in with Naomi Marnez, who is 6-1 with 4 KOs, so perhaps a bit of a puncher. She's from Germany. Her last fight, she actually tasted defeat to the UK's Kirsty Bavington when she came over to Rotherham. She lost to Kirsty Bavington there on points, but went 10 rounds with her. So it's a step up here for Lauren Price. Also on the card, we're going to see Tony Yoka, the Olympic gold medalist, 11-1. He gets in with fellow Frenchman Carlos Takam, 39-7 with a draw. I think it's a really interesting fight, particularly because obviously Tony Yoka lost in his last fight against Martin Bakole, so it's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back. And I just think Carlos Takam's been such a road warrior, boxing here, there and everywhere, that I think he's going to be bang up for this fight back at home, you know. Obviously 42 years of age now, so he's getting up there in age, and one thing that really sticks out to me is that I feel like he beat Arslanbek Makhmudov last time out. You know, I think he beat him over 10 rounds and got jobbed actually in Canada. So seeing him get in here with Tony Yoka, a fight where I think he's going to be bang up for it, back at home, like I say, Yoka coming off a defeat. Yoka not really, I think, even though he's got all the knockouts and stuff, I don't really consider him a massive puncher. I think that this could go to points, and I think that, you know, Yoka points is quite a decent price. And what I have seen, which I think is absolutely insane, is the price on Carlos Takam to win on points. That is 18-1. That is absolutely insane. 18-1 there for Carlos Takam to win on points. I mean, that's worth a small amount anyway, because obviously Carlos Takam can be busy, and yeah, like I say, I think it's a really good opportunity for Carlos Takam. I really like the fight. Elsewhere on the card as well, we're going to see Thomas Four. I think I may be saying that wrong, but he's 21-4 with a draw, only 2 KOs. His best win really was against Tony Avalant, who some people will remember boxed Anthony Yard and Josh Buatsi, I believe. He's not a fantastic fighter really, but he gets in with our very own Dan Aziz. Is for the EBU European Light Heavyweight title. I'm going to assume that Azor must be the champion. Yeah, he is. He won it, I think, maybe last time out. Dan Aziz obviously on a heck of a run as well, pretty much cleared up the domestic scene really. When I say the domestic scene, I mean the fighters that are at domestic level in the domestic scene. I don't want to sit here and say I think he's one of our top 3 light heavyweights in the country. He's probably not, but he has done everything correctly. I like the way he's been moved. He's been impressing, every time. Obviously last time was able to get Rocky Fielding out of there. So yeah, he gets in here with Thomas Four. I think it's a really, really good opportunity for him as well. Obviously this one's going to be in France, but it's actually going to be shown on Sky Sports. So yeah, looking forward to that one on Saturday. All the best to Dan Aziz and Lauren Price out there in France. Moving now to the Echo Arena, Liverpool, Merseyside, United Kingdom. Like I say, I touched on it. It's a real shame that it won't be headlined by Callum Smith. He's out with injury, but the show still goes on. And on the card, let's start with the undercard. We're going to see Campbell Hatton back in action, 9-0, looking for double-figure wins. He gets in with Mitchell Gonche, who's 4-2 with a draw. Never been stopped, never knocked anyone out. 31 years of age, born in Italy, living in Germany. Really, I'm looking through the record. I don't see anything particularly impressive. His wins have all come against guys with losing records, apart from just one guy who isn't that good. His 2 losses came to, one was a debutant, one was a guy who was 1-0, and he drew with a guy who was also a debutant. So this should be really easy pickings for Campbell Hatton, but perhaps he'll get the stoppage, become the first guy to stop this guy. We'll have to see. Talking of guys that need a stoppage, Akib Fiaz as well on the card, 10-0, yet to get a knockout. He gets in with Dean Dodge, who's 9-2 with a draw. Dean Dodge been stopped the one time, which was last time out, to Reece Bellotti. Reece Bellotti a little bit limited really in terms of his arsenal, but certainly he can crack. That's the one thing he does have, really, really heavy hands, and he was able to get Dean Dodge out of there. Like I say, doesn't mean that Fiaz will have an opportunity to do it. He probably won't. But almost a year out the ring for Dean Dodge. All the best there to Aqib Fiaz, of course. Also on the card, and I'm sure will guarantee a knockout, Johnny Fisher, 7-0, 6 KOs. He gets in with Alfonso Damiani, who's 6-2, the Italian, 37 years of age. Got banged out in 3 rounds by a guy with a losing record back in 2021, December. And he's coming off a win last time out. But again, a horrendous opponent, really, for Johnny Fisher. This is such a step backwards, actually, I'd say, from the likes of, well, to be honest, they're still building Johnny Fisher. I'm not even sure who he's boxed who's better than this guy. I was saying it as if this is a step backwards, but really it's pretty much the same kind of caliber of opponent that he's been in with in recent times. But yeah, Johnny Fisher, always exciting. Bosh. And that's how he fights. Bosh. Usually gets a knockout quite quick, and I'm expecting it to be no different here. Also on the card as well, good prospect, Peter McGraw. He is currently 6-0. He gets in with Nicolas Botelli, who's 14-7. That's over 10 rounds there. Botelli from Argentina. Seen the name before. I remember him fighting Sultan Zorbek. Can't remember him fighting anyone else, but good stuff for McGraw. It's a decent looking record for him to swallow up. Rhiannon Dixon as well, 7-0. She fights here for the vacant Commonwealth title, the vacant Commonwealth lightweight title. She gets in with Vicky Wilkinson, who I think is up from the same kind of area, if I'm not mistaken, as Rhiannon Dixon. Could be wrong, but Vicky Wilkinson 5-0 with a draw, no knockouts. Somebody's own must go. Rhiannon Dixon 7-0, no knockouts. You'd expect it to go the distance. Both ladies, don't have any knockouts to their names, but it is over 10 2-minute rounds, so we'll have to see. All the best to both ladies there. Don't really have a horse in the race. It's good though for Rhiannon Dixon, who is going to get a TV slot here, I believe, for the first time. And I'm not sure if she would have been on TV if the Callum Smith fight hadn't have fallen through. So opportunity knocks for her. I could be saying this and be wrong. She may not be on the TV portion, but it's good for her anyway to be on a show like this. I think when she was like 1-0 and people found out what she looked like, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm gonna be paying attention to her." She's quite easy on the eye, and she's done well. Obviously turned pro and been, I think, trained pretty much one-on-one by Anthony Qualler, if I'm not mistaken. So that's great for her. But anyway, good stuff. Good luck for her. Robbie Davies Jr., I think he was set to take on Liam Parrow, if I'm not mistaken, but he pulled out. I could be making that up. But anyway, in steps late replacement, Dara Foley, an Irishman based in Australia, 21-4 with a draw. It's over 10 rounds there. Robbie Davies Jr., his record 23-3. I'm expecting Robbie Davies Jr. to win. Obviously he's had a lot of notice to get into tip-top shape. He was supposed to take on Liam Parrow, and he was expected to lose to Liam Parrow, but here he's expected to win, and he's a massive favourite with the bookies. Dara Foley, he's never really been one who's impressed me. He's lost over here before as well. Lost to Tyrone McKenna, lost to Akeem Ennis-Brown, fought Chris Jenkins as well to a technical draw. So he's never really travelled over here very well, and just he's obviously based out there in Australia. He's mainly just been fighting Australian guys who weren't that good, so I'm not really expecting much from him. There's some people that are, saying he could potentially upset the apple cart, but I don't think so. Even though Robbie Davies Jr. hasn't been that great of late. I mean, he looked fantastic against Hank Lundy when he banged him out in 2 rounds, but he wasn't impressive, I don't think, last time against Javier Molina. It's a fight I can't remember too much of, despite being there in person for it. But yeah, when he lost to Lewis Ritson at 140, that really kind of made me a bit disinterested with Robbie Davies Jr. Nothing personal with him. I like him. He's a friend of the show. I wanted him to beat Ritson, but when he lost to him, and how he lost to him, I thought, wow, like that's the end of the road, really. Like I say, he did a really fantastic performance against Hank Lundy, but other than that, it's been a little bit hit and miss. He lost to that Mexican as well in, I think, a lockdown show, if I'm not mistaken, Gabriel Valenzuela. So he's been a bit hit and miss of recent times, but I still think he's got enough to beat Dara Foley. And the main event, like I say, the elevated to main event fight, Diego Pacheco of Mexico, he comes to the UK. It's great to have him over here. I think they've made a fuss of him. They had a media workout in the week, and I think it was Monday, and I didn't go, but I'm sure the media showed out for him. Very, very exciting prospect, 17-0, 14 KOs. I think he might be trained by, I want to say he's trained by, I think maybe Jose Benavidez Sr. I could be making that up, but if he is, then it'd be great to have him here as well, obviously. And talking of Jose Benavidez as well, I went and saw the Creed 3 film the other day, which was a really, really good film, and obviously Jose Benavidez Jr.'s plays a massive part in that film. But anyway, back on track. Diego Pacheco, 17-0, gets in with Jack Cullen, 21-3 with a draw. It's for the vacant WBO International Super Middleweight title. Jack Cullen, another guy who I think just gets thrown into these tough fights, fight after fight after fight. Obviously impressed against John Harding Jr. I don't think he was supposed to win that fight, but boxed him, was thrown in, managed to win, then gets fed to Felix Cash, gets knocked out, stopped. Then he fights Zach Chelly to a split draw, tough fight. Then he gets in with John Doherty, beats him once again. He wasn't supposed to win that fight. That was a cracking win. Then he gets in with Avni Yildirim and put on a brilliant display of boxing that night. I thought he was excellent, actually. I want to say that was in Eddie's back garden. And then after that loses to Kevin Lee Saggio, gets knocked out by him in Manchester. That was on the Joseph Parker Derek Chisora 2 undercard, if I'm not mistaken, or 1 undercard. And then has a comeback fight and gets in with Diego Pacheco. The only thing that worries me about Jack Cullen is that all 3 of his losses have been by stoppage, and Pacheco's probably the hardest puncher he would have ever been in with. So there's not many people over here giving Jack Cullen a chance. They think that Pacheco is going to just come in and pretty much walk through him and stop him very early. It's probably going to end by stoppage for Pacheco. I'm not sure how early it's going to be, but it'd be nice to see Jack Cullen spring an upset. He's done it many times before, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to do it against someone like Diego Pacheco, who, by the way, some people feel is a little bit overrated. He hasn't had the best opposition. This is probably going to be one of the best fighters he's fought thus far. So, it's a bit of a weird fight, really. It's not one I'd be too confident in, betting on or anything. I think I'm going to leave that one to the side. And now moving to the final 2 cards. We're going to start here with this one. It takes place at the Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney, Olympic Park, New South Wales, Australia. This is listed on Sunday, so I'm going to assume it's probably early hours of Sunday morning. When I say early hours, I mean like 9 a.m. UK time. It'll probably be crazy o'clock in the US, but could be wrong on that, so don't take that for gospel. But anyway, it's a big one obviously over here. Let's start with the undercard. Couple fights to mention. We've got Nikita Sue, 4-0, getting in with the undefeated 7-0 Bo Belbin, who's 7-0. That's over 6 rounds. There's a good fight, I think, between 2 fighters as well. Isaac Hardman gets in with Rowan Murdoch. That could be interesting there. We've got Sam Goodman, 13-0. He gets in with former world champion TJ Doheny, 23-3. That's for the WBO Oriental and the IBF Intercontinental Super Bantamweight titles. All the best to TJ Doheny, man. Good fighter when he had his moments, He had about a year to 2 years of being a truly elite fighter, but then obviously lost to what's that guy's name? The guy that forgot his name. He lost to the guy in Dubai Then the guy fought Michael Conlan. Then the guy fought Liam Davies. Baluta, lost to Baluta, and that was pretty much it. Since then, it's been a little bit hit and miss for him, and it's a shame because, like I say, he didn't get much media attention before he won a world title, and he was hot for a minute, but then it all kind of faded away really quickly as well. So, yeah, I feel for him, really. Went out there to MSGs where he beat Takahashi, and it was a real war, become champion, boxed Danny Roman, was a fantastic fight. And then, yeah, after that, hasn't really done much. Obviously, lost to Baluta, lost to Conlan. So, yeah, anyway, gets in here with Sam Goodman, who I hope they're not taking TJ Doheny for granted. I don't think he's totally finished. He still could perhaps have enough to beat Sam Goodman, but having said that, I haven't really seen much of Sam Goodman. But anyway, it'd be a good fight for the undercard there. And then the main event, Eddie, I'm going to come to you. Tim Tszyu, 21-0. It's for the vacant WBO interim world super welterweight title. He steps in with Tony Harrison, 29-3 with a draw. Tony Harrison these days, I think, spends a lot of time being a trainer, obviously training Alicia Baumgardner. I'm sure he puts in his work as well. Next to her or whatever. Coming off a good win last time out when he beat Sergio Garcia, but that was almost a year ago. Again, Tony Harrison, it's a weird one as well, looking back at his most recent fights. He beat Sergio Garcia, which was a good win. I really rate Sergio Garcia, the Spaniard. You probably wouldn't have seen much of him. But prior to that, he drew with Brian Perella over 12 rounds. That was a split draw. That wasn't a great look. The fight before that is when he got stopped by Jamel Charlo in the rematch. And the fight before that was when he beat Jamel Charlo controversially. The fight before that, a split decision win against Ishe Smith, who Ishe must have been about 40 at the time. I don't think he's on the best run going into this. And Tim Tszyu, he's obviously been flying through the Australian scene, beating a lot of guys over there. I don't really read much into that. But the last two fights he's had have been tough fights. He boxed Takeshi Inoue. I wouldn't say it was a tough fight. He won pretty much every round, but didn't blast him out like he'd been blasting out the Australians. Then he got in with Terrell Gausha. He was down in the first round. He gets in with Tony Harrison here, who is probably the stiffest test of his career. Yeah, it's out of Gausha and Harrison. It's tight here. But anyway, how do you see it going? It's a long way from Detroit for Tony Harrison. But do you think he can do it?
I mean, yeah, there's no question he can do it. It's just a matter of if he's in position to do it, is he going to stay disciplined? Because in my opinion, the second fight with him and Charlo, yeah, he was in control. I felt he was up. I felt that he could win that fight, I think, even better than he won the first, which the first one was kind of controversial. It was, it's kind of a tough, back and forth fight. For him to get the decision was great. But he was, I think, more in control of the second fight. And then, he gets a little bit too confident. He's in a situation like a lot of guys were with Deontay Wilder. And you can't just think that just because you're better or just because you're in a good position that it can't change in an instant. And I think that's the biggest issue with Tony is that, especially with those Charlo fights, you cannot you can't give it away. I think he's had another fight where something like that has kind of happened too, wasn't it? With it was with hold on, we were just talking about him a little earlier in part one, and he's been looking bad recently. What's his name? Jesus.
Hurd.
Yeah, Jared Hurd. And I'm like, he was in a situation there where I felt he was supposed to win that fight.
Yeah, he was outboxing Hurd, and he ran out.
He was outboxing, and then and gave it away. And it's just, Tony is one of the most talented ones there. He could be the best in the division. He has the capabilities, but will he stick to that same plan? Will he be able to finish the fight out? Because Tim Tszyu is on a streak, regardless of whether it's been guys that he should beat or not. He's on a streak. I mean, he got that pedigree behind him with his pop, and he's doing good things. You can't just expect just because you're good or you may be better skill-wise or whatever the situation may be, that you want to go in there and be able to just put your hands down and do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. You got to pay attention. You got to respect the game. If you don't respect the fighter, that's fine, but you got to respect the game. You know what I mean? Go in there and try to win the fight at all costs. Stop. I'm not saying don't be afraid to lose. Like, put yourself in position to win by not being afraid to lose, but at the same time, don't do anything that you don't need to do. If you're in control, keep control. And without a doubt, I think he can do it. But this kid ain't coming from nowhere. He's, like I said, he got the pedigree. He's expecting to win. He's confident. He's strong. He knows what to do. You know what I mean? He's going to step in there with the idea that he's coming to annihilate Tony. Now, whether that happens is up to him. He's got to get in there, and if he assumes that control, if he starts to get in control, he has to keep it, because nobody's going to give it to him. Just because, I beat Charlo once, so what? Nobody care about that. Boxing is a what have you done for me lately sport, and Tony got to go in there and do it now, and he got to be solid. You know what I mean? But it's a good fight, very interesting. He could do it. But Tim Tszyu ain't going to give it to him. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, and talking of not giving it to him as well, obviously, you'd have to worry. You'd have to worry about the scorecards out there in Australia if you're Tony Harrison. Not that I think Australians have been notoriously bad in the past with scorecards. Some would say that Manny Pacquiao was robbed, but I wouldn't. I think that Jeff Horn obviously beat Pacquiao. That was my opinion, but. Yeah, you know, they were fair with Devin Haney and George Kambosos both times. I don't think you actually could rob Devin Haney in those ones. But just the fact that obviously Tim Tszyu is, you know, look who his dad is. You know, he's, you know, a legend out there really, and there's obviously so much power behind that name, that surname Tszyu, and this is like a darling of Australian boxing and even Australia itself. So yeah, there's a hell of a lot of people that would be super upset if he were to lose here. So I'm sure they're going to try to do everything they can to make sure he does get the win. But Tony Harrison obviously has got the skills, has got the tools, and I think has the brains as well to win this fight. It's just a case of, like you say, how he travels and can he stick to a game plan for the whole 12 rounds. Tim Tszyu, young, energetic, got a lot of heart. We've seen him get up off the deck before and win a fight. So yeah, it's intriguing, and we're all going to be watching it. It's going to be really good, I think. But yeah, it's last chance saloon, I think, as well, really, for Tony Harrison. This is like now or never for him, I think. I say never, obviously he's been a world champion before, but I think this is last chance really for him. I think he is coming to the end of his days. Like I say, he's got one foot in the door now, being a trainer to a world champion female. I'm sure he's probably got other fighters as well under his wing. So yeah. Anyway, all the best to him. He's a friend of the show as well. I think he was on once before, Tony Harrison. All the best to him. But yeah, that is it for that one. The final card to mention is just one card that takes place at the Al-Zafar Shrine in San Antonio, Texas, USA. Over here, I don't think it's going to be televised, but friend of the show, Hector Tanahara, 20-1 with a draw. He gets in with John Arellano, who is 10-2 with, I think, 9 KOs. Recently, he lost his last fight to Michael Fox. That's over 6 rounds there. All the best to friend of the show, Hector Tanahara. But that's about it, though, for the preview part of the show. In part 1, we did the review part. We welcomed our special guest after that. And then in part 2, we did the news, and I've just wrapped up the preview part. The final thing for me to do is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a few seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 386 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A huge shout out to this week's special guest, the undefeated lightweight contender Gary Cully. The biggest thanks of all, though, goes out to you, the listeners. I did just want to apologise that this week's show has been put out on a Friday rather than a Thursday. due to unforeseen circumstances. We had a delay, so again, apologies to anyone whose Thursday routine would have been slightly affected. A big thanks to our sponsor as well. Please remember to visit manscaped.com and use the promo code BoxHard for 20% off plus free shipping. But that's about everything from myself. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we shall see you all again next week.